DefCamp. Hopefully this will be an energetic talk because I want to make sure that everyone is wide awake for this. So to give you some background, let's see. I do a lot of stuff. I love to hack stuff. I get bored easily, basically. I've had a lot of very interesting roles, from technical roles to executive roles, and I've been involved in a lot of stuff. With this one, this talk came from trying to trace a particular group that tried to kill me last year called PMC Wagner. So last year I was in Kiev when the Russians attacked. It was not a pleasant experience, and this is actually the first time I'm back in Romania. I'm very happy to be here because the last time I was here, I was fleeing a war. And luckily, Romania opened its arms and welcomed myself and my family here. So one of the things, and I've been working on many different things, some of the stuff that I run into is nation state. And we're seeing more and more of this where either a direct government or a proxy of that government is causing mayhem in the world. So for example, last year, if you saw the pictures of all of the folks trying to leave Ukraine, turns out the border guard actually got hit with the wiper virus, halting people being able to leave Ukraine. So a quick disclaimer for the legal stuff, because I did get an email from some lawyers in the US, but I don't really care. Everything was done in the Netherlands, so I can't be arrested. So I like to look at certificates, and there's a reason for this. The good guys or people and the bad people, they encrypt their stuff. Back in the day, one of the ways that we used to know that there was an encrypted communications channel that was by baddies was because they would encrypt that communications channel at a higher level than anyone else on that network. So they like to use a lot of encryption. So I'm going to show you a particular tool, which I think is very helpful in finding some of these things on the internet, especially when dealing with propaganda networks and malware networks. So when a good actor or a bad actor sets up a whole bunch of systems, they try to do things in an automated way. And using the configuration of those systems, we're able to find good actors and bad actors wherever they are in the world. And it comes from a tool called, well, they just call it JARM fingerprinting from Salesforce. You can find it on GitHub. It's also incorporated in several other tools. Some are commercial and some are not. But everything that I worked on with this presentation, I used at a free level of tools. I didn't pay for tools. The reason being is you can get a lot done with free or low-cost tools. You don't need a humongous budget to do this. So when we're looking at the internet, or when I'm looking at the internet, I try to use a wide range of tools that can see just about everything. And one of the sites that I use a lot is VirusTotal. I've actually been one of their community members, I think, for 13 years. And you can see a lot of different information than what you would usually do. You can link relationships, for example, from the flow of documents that are picked up by antivirus or by various web proxy servers. One of the things I started looking at was a propaganda network coming out of the domain government.ru. And I started to find a connection directly with PMC Wagner. So this is what VirusTotal typically looks like. However, if you join, you can get access, and it's free, to a graph. Now this, I know it looks busy, but I'll point out a few things. And this is one of the important things about looking at certificates. So as you'll notice, there's historic information and real information. These icons here are actually icons for PMC Wagner. A lot of people have been tracing them because they do so many bad things. And what's been interesting is, even though they might take down a system, we can use that historical data to then keep looking at their other assets and networks. And this is very important because PMC Wagner is causing a massive amount of chaos in Africa right now. There are 4 countries that have had coups, and funny enough, PMC Wagner has been there, and they're guarding physically the gold and other precious resources in those countries. And you would think, what is PMC Wagner doing in, I don't know, Sudan or Burkina Faso? Well, they're there, not just physically, but electronically. And they're also sending out their playbook on different types of disinformation. And now parts of Africa are in chaos, all due to PMC Wagner. Great fun, huh? So taking some of the historical stuff, and this was the best graph I could do, I started seeing where all of the worldwide systems were, good and bad, whether it was just a forum, whether it was actually a malware network, or just a distribution network, or just a communications network. So I started pinpointing all of their networks. And one thing I want to add whilst I'm here in Romania, and I couldn't add before, up until less than a year ago, PMC Wagner's main servers were openly hosted in Austria with the full knowledge of the Austrian government, and it was very difficult. Even after they were sanctioned, the Austrian government did not seem very thrilled to take down any of PMC Wagner's open systems that were hosted in Austria. They were not on bulletproof servers. They were open and out. So I started fingerprinting some of these things, and I go, where can I use this? So just like we would try to do asset identification on our systems, you can do the same thing to find all of their systems. Because we're administrators. We have to automate. If you're setting up 100 systems, are you going to have the time to custom configure them? The answer is no. So use the same stuff. So we love to script. If 50,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, whenever the wheel was invented, it would have been us hackers to do it because we like to find loopholes. I'm not saying we're lazy. I'm just saying we're efficient. So using the way that we would do the same systems. So as a nice setup, we're going to do the same things. Well, guess what? The attackers are going to do the same thing that we do. So unfortunately, there was an issue with this one, but I had certain hypothesis questions. Can I use this methodology to find all of the systems in their various configuration that belong to PMC Wagner, whether they're good systems or bad systems? And the answer is yes, absolutely, you can track them. Now, another thing that came out of this, which I thought was a bit interesting, was whilst I was looking for this information, I unfortunately discovered a tool leak. So there's a particular tool, it's quite a nice tool, where you can build your own ransomware in a safe way to test against your systems. That sounds great, right? Yay, build your own safe ransomware. Well, what would happen if that tool got leaked? Well, it turns out it did. And I was able to start tracking it, and it turns out it's been in full use by government.ru, PMC Wagner, and the Kremlin's systems. So apparently, they stole the source code and have been using this tool at least since November of last year. Even though the tool is under export control for obvious reasons, it can be easily weaponized. Unfortunately, the company in the United States was not aware that they had a tool leak. They were not proactively looking for this, and it was very unexpected for them. Perhaps they did not have a plan in place for what happens if the government of Russia steals your easily weaponized tool and uses it against you. And this is a problem, right? Because you can weaponize everything. I currently live in the Netherlands, and it's the only country that says it's illegal to ping. Because of, I don't know, 20-some years ago, there used to be this thing called the ping of death back in the day. And they still have it on the books. But you can't do administration with your systems if you don't use ping. So we've got some weird and wonderful things left over from some of previous incidents that have caused a lot of issues in the world. Unfortunately, that has not translated into this tool company doing much about it. So this happens to be the JARM fingerprint of this particular tool that got leaked out. Now, as you can tell, this is only a snippet. There's a whole bunch of hosts, and they're all over the world. This is actually the long form of the JARM fingerprint, where you can actually find this particular tool. And I've got a private listing of the various JARM fingerprints on this as well, if anybody is interested. So, because I like to not pay money for stuff, it's not that I'm cheap, it's just I don't have loads of money. I try to use a lot of free or low-cost tools. And in this case, I use the free version of Census. I want to stress free version to look at this kind of stuff. So I create a dork of sorts, right? You can do the same thing in Shodan or any of the other tools to try to get the information that you want. So I was able to create this dork with this longish JARM fingerprint and used the search, because Census gets a very large view of the world, just like Shodan does. They're constantly scanning, looking for issues, and reporting it. So some of the results that I got were that the tool is in use. It is around the world. It is being misused. However, I do want to point out that there were some duplicates and things, so I do not believe that there's 40,000 of these going around, but probably around 1,500 systems in the world. Now, some of the concerning things, though, is these with the IoT and the SCADA systems, those I verified, actually, they look like they were compromised with this leaked tool. And nobody really wants a SCADA system or an operational technology system being manipulated by anyone other than an engineer. On one of the victims where this tool is being used against them, it's a UK-EU company, and they do a lot of things with GPS and location services when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to maritime, etc. So it looks like one of the big targets for this tool coming out of Russia is to affect companies that deal with global positioning on necessary everyday things. So it unfortunately follows a pattern of various manipulation of positioning that Russia has used in the past and currently does use with some of their enemies of their state. Now, I wanted to show an overview of how this can be used, because there's a lot of these C2s or command and control channels and systems and so forth, and this is just now one of them, but how it can be used. And I want to stress this was free. So you can actually use some of this stuff and find exactly where the systems are located and what's coming out of them and what type of access you can actually get. So in these particular systems, we see a lot of remote access being allowed. I highly recommend doing a proactive look-see on all of your organization's systems, because remote access is one of the big targets for some of the stuff coming out of Russia. It is just entirely too easy to take advantage of. The going rate to pay someone to get into an RDP, or remote desktop session for a normal system, it's going on the dark web, $1. If you want a government US system or military system, it's $10. So it is that easy to get into remote systems. This is another bit of an issue, which I have a problem with, because this was from the tool that was leaked, And with this particular security tool, which can be easily weaponized, for some odd reason, the company thought it was a great idea that when someone's testing things out or buys their service, that they allow what's called a test or a demo certificate to be used with their clients. And what this means is all of the clients who are using this test certificate, they're using all the same certificate. They don't have their own certificate. So this is a bit problematic if you're a company and you're sharing this type of stuff with other companies and you're trying to keep things, to yourself. There are some other things that you can do. You can do this in Showdown as well by stipulating the exact C2 that you want to use. And one of the things that I find is there is a bevy of tools that PMC Wagner is using. Cobalt Strike is only one of them, but they're more and more using as many tool leaks as possible to take advantage. They're running into a money problem, so they're now having to reuse some of the stuff that they can. Another one, and this was very curious, is if I take a look at some of the tool leak that I found, there's quite a few different types of systems that this particular tool is aimed for. They had expanded their tool coverage to include Android and Linux a couple of years ago after I demoed it. So it can be across many different platforms. So one of the biggest things is we are in a very chaotic world right now. Be prepared for absolute chaos. We have to. There is no longer a separation between geopolitics and the tech world. It is now merged completely. So we need to be aware of that. I highly recommend using the Salesforce JARM fingerprinting tool on GitHub to go through your systems, and it's great for asset management internally for all of your stuff. But then you can start determining, hey, we've got all that stuff. What's that? Uh-oh. That's the way that Salesforce actually developed this tool, was they had lots of systems, and they were trying to determine what belonged to them, and then they started to find that they had been exposed and infiltrated, and that's now the development of this tool and the reason why. So also, when you find this stuff, remember when you communicate it with management types, make very pretty pie charts and communicate to them in their terminology, otherwise they won't do anything. But they love pie charts. That's why I love to put in their fancy pie charts. And decision makers, they'll eat it up. Never show them a packet capture. So I wanted to leave some time for questions, because I do like questions and I do want to make this interactive. And thank you very much, DefCamp Romania. Please ask questions away.
Thank you, Chris. So thank you so much, Chris. I wanted to remind you that if you want one of these hats that I'm wearing, if you ask a question, you get a DefCamp hat to take home. So let's hear it.
Woohoo!
Raise your hand so we can get a mic to you, because otherwise it's going to be a bit of a challenge.
Who wants a hat? I have someone who wants a hat right here.
Right, so tell us a bit more about that incident with Wagner when they were chasing you.
Oh, well, let's see. So we decided to take a southern route, trying to head to Romania because all the traffic towards Poland was, just no go. Plus, we had a bunch of Romanians in our van, funny enough, that we'd never met before. And as we were trying to take the southern route, we discovered that PMC Wagner had already established themselves and were trying to set up checkpoints just after Kiev had come under attack. So the little green men rumor kind of thing of Russians already there was absolutely true. So unfortunately, Wagner, we blew through 2 checkpoints and so forth, but I ended up fracturing my ankle and tibia in the process. So if, as he pointed out, he did not want to tell me, don't break a leg before I got on stage because I don't need another leg break. But what was interesting was they were already there in places that you would not have expected. And through my route, they actually had a propaganda truck. I took a picture of it, where they were also physically dropping pamphlets into the various Ukrainian villages we were passing through. So they're a bit devious, and whew, they really gave us a run for our money, so to speak. They're not very nice. So yes, PMC Wagner, not on my good list. More questions? I see one there. That man needs a hat.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. So, did Wagner use this tool, and if yes, how did your research affected Wagner's work in this field? Did it have any impact? Did any action has been taken against Wagner using this kind of tools?
So the question was, has any of my work made a difference? One of the things I like to do is try to disrupt and cost time and effort on the adversary. So between this work and others inside of VirusTotal, we have been able to disrupt and to get things taken down. It's not the quickest and easiest process because sometimes even if you have a mountain of evidence that is given to a government saying, hey, you got this stuff going on, if that particular government, like Austria, doesn't do anything about it, then it's very difficult to have an impact. But at the same time, one of the things I try to ensure is that any of the research that I do is out in the open so people can continue it and work on it and also can share it and build upon it so that all the information is there. So if you happen to join VirusTotal's community, you can see my graphs and a few others by searching for Kremlin propaganda or PMC Wagner propaganda. And those graphs will show up for their propaganda networks and their malware networks that you can then start detailing in and using. But I wish it had more impact, sometimes my work, but sometimes governments don't listen. Who else? I see people who want hats. One, two, three, and one's very excited in the back.
We have time. We'll get to you. I promise.
Person.
We'll get to you. We have time. Keep your hands up so people can see. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Super. So you look like one of the most courageous women in the world. Can you hear me okay?
Now I can.
Okay, super. So you look like one of the most courageous women in the world. What words of wisdom or encouragement do you have for young girls that want to follow in your footsteps, although they might be very dangerous based on your sayings and experience?
So one of the things I would say to young women is our time is now. One of the things that I've seen in Ukraine is proof positive. When, unfortunately, many men have been conscripted and women have stepped into the cyber role. It is down to many Ukrainian women who are literally keeping the lights on in Ukraine and rebuilding networks constantly. The women in cyber in Ukraine. This is a war, and we are involved, and we have to be there. And we have an opportunity and a unique perspective to be able to keep the lights on and our countries running and our democracy functioning. And it takes all of us, including women. So join me. Next question. There's a very eager person way back there as well.
Hi. So, wait, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. So this is a bit more general question, but I'm wondering what prompted you to get into cybersecurity and start your career? Because I've seen that you have some really interesting stories, and I'm wondering if what actually started your whole career.
Well, one of the things I noticed as a kid is the unique power that us as technologists have. We can cause chaos or we can do something good in the world. And I decided, I'm going to try to do something good in the world. I'm going to try to utilize my skill set and try to do better. If it is, alerting a nuclear power plant, hey, maybe you shouldn't have that system open to the internet, or trying to help with distributing information to hopefully take PMC Wagner off the internet. We have these special skills. We've got to use them for the good. Next question.
Let's go in the back. We're going to go to the back for this one and then come back to you here in the front. We still have time. Everyone gets to ask a question. Everyone. Yep. Keep waving that. Almost there. There you go.
Hi. That's the effect of 3 coffees in the morning, because we got up at 5 to be here. So my question is the following. I'm left with the impression that it's in cyber world, it's no longer about good and evil in terms of sides. It's which side are you on? Are you on the Western side? Are you on the Eastern side? So what's your opinion, besides Russia and Kremlin-related organizations, what other nation states are in the game doing the same tactics, like maybe Iran or, I don't know, US?
So what other countries might be in the game that we don't really hear about in the news? So I'll tell you, Vietnam is a big player. Another one is Ethiopia. They have had a mature offensive cyber program for over a decade due to their war with Eritrea, as well as a very interesting dam that is possibly going to be filled with water and going to cause issues in that region of the world. Those are some of the up and coming and look at countries to take a gander at and see what you can find, especially Vietnam.
Hello. Hi, thanks for the presentation. This was great. I have 2 questions. One, did you mention the tool and the company that was abused, or?
Yes, I showed the picture. Again, I did this in the Netherlands, so you can't arrest me or sue me. It is called Scythe.
Oh, Scythe. Okay. And regarding JARM fingerprinting, can you talk a little bit about the defensive applications of this? Because I assume it can also be used for threat hunting inside your own corporate network, not just finding threats on the internet, obviously.
Exactly. So you can use JARM fingerprinting inside your own network to make sure, firstly, that your stuff is actually all configured correctly, because you might find, oh, these are our systems inside the network, but they're not configured at the same rate or security level that they should be, because this is basically the fingerprint of the TLS configuration of that system. So it's quite specific on that. So you can find systems that should have been updated, taken down, or modified or upgraded in some manner on your own network, organization's network. So it's very, very handy to keep track of your own stuff and the configurations to make sure that they match. So it's extremely handy, and it's very high speed. So you can just run the tool, if you have Python, run it inside your network, and you start populating your list and know exactly what's yours, what isn't, and what is a maybe. And then you can further determine that. So it's very useful for our own system administration. Correct. So if you happen to find something with that isn't yours, with a unique fingerprint that is calling home outside your organization, this is another way that you can find those particular systems because they clearly don't belong to you. Next question.
Hi, Chris.
Yes.
Here.
So thanks for the presentation. I have a question about the Web3 and blockchain stuff. I'm interested in what are the most known vulnerabilities that you know that blockchain companies that are like doing their things and that they are like building their projects, they should be aware of in terms of like from the cybersecurity point of view, from the hacking point of view. So that's something interesting for me because I do work in in blockchain industry at the moment.
So, one of the questions is what are some of the main vulnerabilities that organizations, people should be aware of? It is remotability. So if you have any sort of protocol or service that is going to allow access to your systems. It could be if you have some old school FTP hanging around. Another big one that gets taken advantage of a lot is administrators will set up SSH and then leave it and never update it. And then you're like, wait a second, there's open exploits on this version of SSH. Again, remoting, but it's put in and forgotten. And that's one of the top ways over SSH to exploit SSH that you always find happy hacker joy in getting into. So definitely take a look at, even though it seems secure, if it isn't getting updated and so forth, there's exploits out there. So definitely look at your SSH and what versions are running. Next question.
In the back.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for your great presentation.
Could you talk up?
Yep.
Also loud from the
Okay.
construction.
Thank you very much for the great presentation, Chris. I have a question related to the fact that Austria didn't do anything about the servers that were hosted in the country. What is your opinion about that? Did they have something against Austria to blackmail them, or what? What do you think was the reason?
So why do I think that Austria has been reluctant to take down things like a Wagner server inside their country? Austria seems to have an interesting and complicated relationship with Russia. I do know when I arrived at the airport and I was walking through, I heard a lot of Russian being spoken. So they have some very interesting relationships with Russia. I don't know if that's left over from their previous administration. They seem to think that they can somehow stay neutral, but I'm not sure how that equals neutrality. So I'm not Austrian. I can't really talk about why exactly I think the Austrian government has such an interesting relationship with Russia. But I can say I think it's very uncomfortable to have such a close-knit relationship and allow so many things to occur inside Austrian digital space. It just doesn't make sense to me.
And one last question here in the front. I'm going to take the mic to you.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. So I have a question. How do you think the cyber attacks will evolve in the future, and which are the main targets?
So how do I think cyber will evolve in the future?
Cyber attacks.
Well, how do I think cyber attacks will evolve in the future? Well, I think that there's going to be more and more of an increase in the use of automation and various different types of, under the term artificial intelligence. I think that various tools, I mean, I've been using some of it myself, have been able to accelerate tool creation and modification, and also to create tools that can automatically determine much better if there is something that is exploitable or not, and then be able, from that condition, to put that information into a large language model system to be able to then automate and build an exploit. I think that's one of the next stages. Because if we can write papers with ChatGPT, why can't we automate a custom exploit and attack? So I think that's where it's going. If we ever do get into a post-quantum cryptographic world, then I think that a lot of our encryption is obviously going to be at risk. Although I will say, luckily, I am currently in draft for writing a paper on how to involve ethical hackers into the discussion of the post-quantum cryptographic world. And the White House actually asked to review my draft paper, so it looks like they want to involve us ethical hackers. So these are some of the next stages of the evolution, I think, where it will be going.